The idea of discovering a mineral deposit is quite an interesting one, right? And I think a lot of the ideas that are conjured up in someone's mind when you think about mineral exploration and discovery is a sort of a crusty old prospector out in the bush with a geopic.
It's literally what I think of.
Hasn't seen another human for a while, maybe. Gone a little bit loopy, potentially.
Hi, and welcome to Wonder, the Planet Earth podcast for curious people. I'm Holly Cook, joined by my fellow Earth scientist, Dr. Anthony REE. Are you going well, Anthony?
Very well, thanks, Holly.
Excellent. I'm even better for the fact that we have across the table from us today another specky scientist from the Centre in Critical Resources for the Future. That would be Ross Chandler, postdoc at Australian National University, obviously working in this Critical Resources Centre. Now, Ross, we have had some really great conversations with Marco and Isra around how the Earth makes an ore deposit, how it goes from this mother of metal in the mantle to something we can access on the crust, or in the crust, I should say. But Ross, on the human scale, what does it mean to discover a deposit?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. Stoked to be on the show. I guess, the idea of discovering a mineral deposit is quite an interesting one, right? And I think a lot of the ideas that are conjured up in someone's mind when you think about mineral exploration and discovery is a sort of a crusty old prospector out in the bush with a geopic.
It's literally what I think of.
Hasn't seen another human for a while, maybe. Gone a little bit loopy, potentially, and starts wandering over the hills and smacking rocks and cracks one of them open. There's a giant gold nugget in it or something like that.
Gold nugget.
And there is still a bit of that aspect. I will admit there's still a little bit of that aspect in it, I think. But the idea of a discovery and how we discover things is changing really, really rapidly, as well as what we're looking for. And this is a big sort of focus of the centre and a focus of a lot of geological research in the sort of the modern day and what we'll be doing in the future.
Yeah, cool.
Whereas humans have been looking for gold for, I think, 5,000 years is sort of the earliest evidence we have for people smelting things out of gold and making jewellery. So we've been looking for gold and thinking about gold for a really, really long time. Same with things like copper and tin and these other sort of base metals. Things like lithium, things like rare earths, these have only really started to become interesting in the last decade often. So we really have a sort of a primitive idea of how these deposits form, a primitive idea how to look for them. And it's really an exciting challenge and something that a lot of people are putting a lot of time into is figuring out how we can actually go about finding these things.
Interesting. So that's straight away thinking of Marco with like, what's a resource? A resource is a human thing, and a resource, as what is the subject of a resource is not necessarily the same three times. So something like gold, gold. More like there are some really, there are some metals out there that are really precious to today that we haven't necessarily built a huge backlog of knowledge around how to discover them yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, to be fair to gold, also very interesting, maybe less critical resource. There's lots of exciting research coming out about all deposit types that leads to new sort of opening up of new areas that might be considered prospective now that weren't. But yeah, these commodities we mentioned, that's really the focus of the centre, are the ones where it's really exciting. So lithium, for example, no one cared about lithium. Even 8-9 years ago, no one cared about lithium. There was no one looking for it. There was a very, very tiny market for it. And then all of a sudden, with the onset of batteries becoming very important, so we need solid state energy storage sort of solutions, lithium became very, very important. I think prior to that, it was actually more important for medication for certain mental disorders. Lithium was used.
Interesting.
And that was the main market for it. And now it's a huge multi-trillion-dollar industry for things like electric vehicles, for house batteries, that sort of stuff.
Fascinating.
So as a result of that, there were, even 10 years ago, there were very, very smart geologists that were walking right over the top of outcropping lithium deposits and not caring at all. In fact, there were companies that were owned these lithium deposits, then they were mining them for things like tin and tantalum, and they were going bankrupt. Whereas if they'd held on to them for another 5 years, they would have been printing cash because all of a sudden these things turned out to be very, very valuable. So it's a very sort of rapidly evolving sort of area in mineral exploration, is all these new commodities coming into the fore, companies going out and looking for them, and a lot of them having no idea what they're doing because these are brand new things. And amazing avenue of opportunity for research as well as for exploration.
Fascinating. So there is so much in that, Ross. First, I think we should do you some justice. I realised I went so quickly into the idea of what's a discovery that I actually want to know about you. Why are you interested in this at all? You're a geologist by background. Before we go neck deep into discoveries, why are you interested in this, Ross?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think who could not be interested in this?
Oh, I like that answer. We like that.
By definition, it's interesting. Yeah.
Anyone that's interested in like the idea of discovery and like going out and exploring and looking for new things, I think mineral exploration, it fits the bill pretty well. If you liked Indiana Jones movies growing up, you probably would like the idea of treasure hunting. Right?
Yeah.
So I think I grew up in a very scientific household. Both my parents have degrees in biology. So of course they were very upset when I decided to study biology. But I think that combination of the really interested in the science of geology, so how the world is evolving through time, what controls the distribution of ore deposits, and then combined with a little sort of the romance of the exploration and going out there, going to remote places, trying to discover something that no one else has found before is sort of the perfect nexus that sort of ticks all the boxes for me. It's something that not many people are really aware of as even a thing, right? Like no one really puts any sort of thought, or besides geologists, of course, and people in our industry, no one thinks much about how things end up being where they are. Or
do you mean like, is it like?
Even things like a phone, exactly right. Like the neodymium in that phone, that came from somewhere, and that was in a deposit that was found by someone originally. So someone had an idea, they went out, I'm going to try and find a rare earth deposit that has neodymium in it. And they probably spent a lot of money looking for it. They probably failed many, many times, but eventually they found one, which was then mined and then processed and then ended up in a phone. So everything that we sort of use in modern day life was at one point an exploration target that an exploration geologist came up with and said, how do I find this deposit that I can then mine to get these resources out of it? So I think it's fascinating. I think anyone that is exposed to it finds it interesting. Just not many people are actually exposed to it.
Is it hard to do?
Well, it's very hard to do. I mean, it's very easy to do. It's very hard to do well.
Well said.
Yeah. So, and also too, everything has a very high component of luck in there as well, right? You can be doing everything exactly right. You can be getting technical success after technical success. But if the gods aren't smiling on you for whatever reason, you'll be out of luck. But it is very challenging. And mineral deposits don't all look the same, right? If there was a single recipe for everything, it'd be quite easy. If a rare earth deposit always had exactly the same geophysical signature, if it had the same geochemical signature, it'd be very easy to find these things because it's essentially a copy and paste sort of exercise. But that's not the reality. And it turns out almost every deposit is very, very different to each other. There's shared common themes. There are things like they occur in certain tectonic locations, so certain areas in the continent or globally, you might tend to find more deposits than others, and they might have similar chemical signatures or similar geophysical signatures, but they're never exactly the same, which turns into a really challenging sort of exercise, and in often ways a bit more of an art than a science in terms of interpreting what you're seeing and whether or not this could be a deposit or it might not be. So it ends up being a lot of false positives. I don't know how many, I doubt there are numbers on this, but there'd be thousands of targets. One turns into a prospect, and then out of every 100 prospects, maybe one turns into something that you'd go after. So it ends up being that there's really very few solid deposits found from a lot of targets that are initially generated.
Does that tell you something about geology, or does it tell you something about people?
I'd say both, for sure. And I think what it tells you about people is people are very optimistic. Right?
Everyone wants the treasure.
Everyone wants the treasure. Everyone sees a nice geophysical target in some data or a nice geochemical target. You can build a really nice story around that. The optimism comes in, you say, that's a deposit for sure. Like, I'm going to convince my boss to give me $1 million so I can put a drill hole into that because I think this is a target. I'm optimistic. The fact that most of them turn out to not be ore deposits speaks a lot about geology, where it's to get the conditions required to make an ore deposit and to preserve an ore deposit are very, very rare, very vanishingly rare even. And what truly makes tier 1 deposits, that in deposits that can be mined economically at all points in the price cycle. So even when commodity prices are quite low, you can still mine them. These are very, very rare deposits. So there's only a handful really in Australia. In things like rare earths, lithium, which experience significant price swings. So sometimes they're very, very expensive. Sometimes they're very, very cheap. There may be no tier 1 deposits globally. So these are very, very rare that you get the geological processes happening in the right order to form and to preserve a significant ore deposit. It's vanishingly rare.
Because I think that you've raised something I'd love to explore with you, which is the geological conditions of ore deposits. First, I want to have my own input into that answer and ask for thoughts for the clever people at the table. with the human idea of a deposit, I would like to link this back to our chat with Marco, which is that geologically you can concentrate metals, and there's a whole awesome, oh my gosh, no pun intended, a whole awesome world about how you can concentrate metal. But what makes something a resource is things like its demand. So you can have this wonderful picture of ancient Earth history coming together in beautiful and complex ways to take metal from the mantle and concentrate it in the crust. But ultimately, humans decide resources. Humans decide what is going to be used into technology, how much we're going to pay for it, but even more so, our resources are future facing. So we decide how and what and when we move things from out of the ground and into the technology. So throughout this conversation, I'd like our listeners to think about that. What decides a resource is also a human one, and it's not necessarily only economics, it's also how we're going to design and develop resources of the future that for other critical resources like our water, how things interact with our environment and our societies. Future-facing resources are also ones that fit into what we would like the Australian resource industry to look like moving into the future. So I think that's an interesting overlay too.
And you're also commenting there on the fact that what might have been a resource or might not have been a resource in the past can become one now, and that part of that can be a technological advance. So,
correct.
You might find copper in very low abundances in some areas, but now due to improved
processing technology, mining, extraction, whatever, that low concentration of copper is now something that is an economic resource, and that's not been a geological change; it's been a human one. Yeah. Ross. You nailed it when you said the picture of a prospector is like a hammer in the bush looking for a gold nugget. So do Australian exploration geologists just roam in the bush? Like what does it even mean to conduct exploration in Australia?
Well, yeah, there is, as I said, there's a healthy amount of walking through the bush, getting lost. And I can't tell you how many flat tires I've got driving around the bush looking for things. But really, exploration is sort of an exercise in size reduction, right? You have a target area that starts very, very large. So you might be dealing on sort of a continent scale searching, depending on what you're looking for. And then it's using techniques to try and make that area smaller and smaller and smaller until you've got something that you can test with a drill hole, basically. So you might start with geophysical techniques. So this is through often, Australia's very lucky in this, that we have a lot of pre-competitive data that the surveys and the government have collected, geophysical data sets that stretch across the entire country, which we take for granted here. It's not something that every country has. So starting with these very big data sets to narrow in on the tectonic settings, the rock types that might have the deposit that we're looking for.
So those vanishing conditions.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So you start it with a very large area, and then you quite rapidly narrow that, often using geophysical targeting, to try and guesstimate where you're going to have the best likelihood of finding a mineral deposit. Then it's doing things like going out and doing geochemical surveys, mapping, potentially doing geochronology on the rocks to make sure you're in the right sort of age environment, potentially, and then trying to narrow that target down even closer and closer. And then by the time you get to that stage, that's when the prospecting can come in, right? You can go out there with a geopick, start looking at the right target units that might look interesting, banging off bits of rock and getting them analyzed in the lab to sort of build up something that would be worth testing with a drill hole. Because as I said previously, it's a very expensive game. The best way to find deposits in Australia would be to go out and on a 100 by 100 meter grid, drill the entire country. That would probably be the most effective in terms of finding it. But of course, it's way too expensive to do that. So it's all an exercise in trying to find something that you can test with a target and say, this is a deposit or it's not. But yeah, the modern day prospector is very different to the old timey prospector, where we're dealing with big data, we're dealing with geophysics, we're doing geochemistry, geology techniques as well. So it's really transformed a lot from just a crusty guy who hasn't seen civilization or a shower in a few months to big teams working in across all sorts of different scales of data, from satellites, from everything, which makes it really exciting and very multidisciplinary as well.
Absolutely. So it's sounding like a search is what this is. And it's a search at several different scales. And at each scale, you're asking yourself different, mostly big picture scientific questions. And sure, this debate I brought up about, the human construct of a resource, that comes later. But how the Earth concentrates these metals under vanishing geological conditions, you search on continent scales using one type of data, geophysical data. You then sort of Where's Wally your way down to smaller scales until you're, I suppose, the search space that you're engaging with is small enough to go and on foot check it out.
That's it. Yeah. And circling back to that idea of discovery as well. So when you start putting drill holes into things, what you're looking for is you're looking for a discovery. And discovery rates have been going down globally, right? In most commodities, things like copper, things like gold, we've been looking for them for quite a while. A lot of the easy sort of targeting has already been done. So discovery rates for that are plummeting. In terms of the last time that we had big copper deposit found in Australia was quite a while ago. DeGrussa was probably the last in WA. And we haven't had a significant copper discovery for a long time. But on the flip side, critical metals, discovery rates are actually increasing at the moment. So lithium, as I talked about earlier, there's been numerous very large lithium deposits found in Australia in the last couple of years. Rare earths are another great example of this, where now that we have focused exploration on these, we're actually finding the deposits that we didn't realize we had. Other things like niobium, which you might be familiar with.
Hint, hint, wink, wink. Yeah.
So we're really seeing like a switching in what we're looking for, and actually a switching in discovery rates as well. So I think that's really exciting. It shows that the potential for the rocks are here, and they've been here all along. We just haven't really recognized these. It's a massive opportunity.
So how well, when you're out there exploring, how well formed is your idea of what you're looking for? So, for example, I've lost my keys again, but I know exactly what my keys look like. Right. And so then it's just a matter of being a little bit systematic and going from one part of the house to the other, maybe starting in one room and working our way through. So you just got to looking because you know what you're looking for. But
you're not going to mistake a fork for a key because you know what a key looks like. Unless you're hungry.
That's exactly right. But in this case, you don't actually know what the thing that you're looking for looks like necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely right. And sometimes even when it's staring in your face, you don't know what you're looking at. And that's it. It sort of circles back to that idea that all deposits are different, right? So carbonatites, for example.
Stop.
Hey,
what is a carbonatite?
Okay, carbonatites. Which
Side note, you can't just drop a word like that and keep going. Okay. What's a carbonatite, Ross?
So carbonatites are a very rare type of igneous rock that is dominated by carbonate minerals. So whereas most igneous rocks like granites or basalts are dominated by silicate minerals, and most of the continental crust is, carbonatites are, on the other hand, carbonate minerals like calcite or dolomite or these sort of things.
And
I've got a sample of it here. And we can, I wasn't going to talk about it yet, but since we're on the topic now.
We're on it.
This is from a carbonatite in Canada called Saint Honore.
Oh, I see it.
Of course you can.
I've been reading about this.
And before we describe this in too much detail, the big feature about carbonatites that makes a lot of people interested is that they often contain economic amounts of rare earths and niobium.
Okay.
So this sample from Saint Honore here, the red mineral in that is a mineral called bastnasite, which is a rare earth carbonate. So you've got one rare earth atom connected to a carbonate with a fluorine in there. The rest of it is probably dolomite. So calcium, magnesium, carbonates, that sort of thing. So
if you poured acid onto this, will it dissolve?
It would partially dissolve. It usually, a thing about a lot of these critical metals too, they're very metallurgically challenging. So the best way to get the rare earths out of that would be under a pressure leach. Ooh. So you need a high pressure, usually high temperature leach circuit to adequately extract them. And then the extract product is right here.
What is that?
So, all right.
What is that?
So this was a gift from a friend of mine who knows me very well. I get called Rare Earth Ross by a few of my friends, by the way.
Why didn't you say that like 15 minutes ago?
Yeah.
This is Rare Earth Ross. Sorry. Please continue. This is interesting.
The least cool thing about me.
No, that is cool. But pretty nerdy though.
Very nerdy.
Okay, Arkin.
Arkin Anthony. But that in there. So those are the metallic forms of the rare earths. So if you extracted all the rare earth metal out of that red mineral in that hand sample you got in front of you, and then separated it out into the individual rare earth metals, that's what it would look like.
Wow. So we're looking at so these are names of elements we have here. That's
yeah. So circling back, the rare earths are a group of elements.
And we hear about them a hell of a lot lately. They are around. Yep.
They're very topical, very political at the moment. But the rare earth elements are a series of 15 or 17 elements, depending on who you talk to, that are all very geochemically similar. So they usually have a 3+ charge. They can vary, but usually it's 3+, and they have quite a similar ionic radius, just slightly decreasing from lights to heavy rare earths, which is just two ends of the rare earths. What really makes us interested in them, besides the fact that they can tell you really interesting petrological information about how the rock forms, is that the addition of some of these rare earths, in particular neodymium and praseodymium, to iron magnets makes them very, very strong. And then the addition of some heavy rare earths like dysprosium and terbium makes them heat resistant.
Wow.
So in a Tesla or in a wind turbine where you've got a magnet within an electric motor that spins very, very fast, it gets hot. To enable it to keep that strong magnetic field even at high temperature, you need to dope it with a little bit of these rare earths.
Wow.
So of course, in an era where we're looking at EVs are becoming more and more popular, wind turbines are becoming they're everywhere.
Necessary.
We need them. Yeah, we need them. So, and they're very metallurgically complex. There's not many places in the world that know how to actually process them. So there's a big sort of search for these at the moment to try and figure out how these deposits form and then figure out the best way to look for these deposits.
Oh, fascinating and good, because now I'd like to zoom back out again on the original question, which this has all been a fantastic side tangent, but we zoom back to Anthony's question, which is, how well can you find your keys if you don't know what keys look like? And I'd like to clarify that and say, we spoke with Marco and Isra around, there is a way you can approach mineral system science. There is a way that you can understand a mineral system to quite surgically target a particular scale of search space. You can go on a high level with a systems understanding of what the Earth's done. And you can go, this is looking like an area with maybe some patchy mantle activity. Like, let's go here. But then once you're there, am I hearing correctly that a rare earth deposit here might not look like one here, and a carbonatite here doesn't look like a carbonatite here? So all of a sudden, you don't know what your keys look like. Ross, how do you begin to imagine what your keys look like, what your deposit looks like, if the truth is, boots on the ground, they are a little varied?
Yeah. So even though they are varied, they do share certain characteristics that enable you to find them. If they were completely different, completely random, you'd have a very tough time finding your keys. I would just call it locksmith, to be honest. But you can really step back and start to build something like a deposit model. So this is where you look at shared characteristics of certain deposits and you can start to use that to narrow in on where you'd look.
Right.
So carbonatites, for example, they often appear on the edges of cratons. So on the edges of very thick parts of old crust, you often get carbonatites along the edges of those. They're always associated with big structures. So where you can image structures in geophysical data, for example, and by structures, I mean like a very large fault that might cut through the entire crust.
Right. So like big breaks in the earth.
Big breaks in the earth that sort of separate different continental blocks or crustal blocks. You always need, you need a structure like that to get a carbonatite because carbonatites effectively come from the mantle. So similar to what Ezra was talking about, if you melt a certain type of mantle to a very low degree of melting, so just the first little bits of melt that come off, and you extract that up to the upper crust, that's how you form a carbonatite. The best way to do that is have a big structure that melt can exploit. So we're looking for areas next to cratons often, or on the edges of cratons, big faults that are in those areas. That would sort of be the first sort of criteria you would start to do to find your keys. So you'd look at a map of Australia and you'd say, okay, here's somewhere I think.
So this is like saying, when I came in from the car last night, where would I have gone first?
Exactly right. Yeah. Right. This is retracing your steps to try and narrow exactly where you were. Yeah. That'd be the first step.
Guys, this is a great analogy, actually. Yeah, fantastic.
All right, so if we've worked out,
it's in your house somewhere.
It's in the house. At least it's in the house.
It's in your house somewhere.
All right, gotcha.
So then the next step there would be narrowing in on these structures and starting to look for geophysical or geochemical or geological clues. So we'd be looking for example, carbonatites often have magnetic minerals in them. So it might be magnetite or pyrrhotite, something like that.
Sounds like geophysics.
Another great thing for geophysics is that there might be a magnetic signature. So if you've got big structures that have unexplained magnetic blobs on it, that'd be a great spot to start looking. Carbonatites are also very enriched in rare earths, of course, but things like strontium, barium, niobium. So if you've got geochemical data that might go across a large area over one of these faults, you might see anomalism in this geochemistry that would suggest that there's a concentration of these elements somewhere. So that would be your next sort of step to narrow down even further.
So Ross, as I understand it, you have actually a really cool story to tell about a discovery that you were a part of. I would like to understand how, this is all great talk. You've applied this. You've applied this kind of question asking to encounter deposits. Is that right?
Yeah,
In fact, might I even just add it here? Congratulations on 2023 Prospector of the Year, Ross.
Thank you. Joint Prospector of the Year, I should say. Thank you.
Congrats to everyone involved. Now, please tell me the story.
So, I have been very fortunate to be involved in the discovery of a significant rare earth deposit called the Yin deposit.
Right.
And like most stories, it starts with friendship.
Oh.
And actually, it starts around the same time as the first time I met Anthony, which was quite a few years ago now at a summer school called Nexus, which is run here in Adelaide by Richard Lilly. And I met a guy called Luke Blaze, who turned out to be, we ended up being quite close friends. So fast forward a few years later, I'm sort of taking a break from the PhD at the time, and I'm doing an internship at CSIRO, and I'm tasked with compiling all of the data we have on Australia's carbonatites together. So building a big review of carbonatites. And I've been working on carbonatites for a little bit then, so I was starting to get very interested in them, starting to build up quite a knowledge base on what they look like and how you go about finding them, sort of thing. So Luke at the time was working for a company called Dreadnought Resources, and after getting on the beers a few times, we figured out that they actually had the ground right next to a known carbonatite up in the Gascoyne region of WA.
It's very geology.
Geology. So I said, man, you have to start looking for carbonatites here.
Very geology.
Because you're right there. So he was like, all right, whatever. Like at the time, no one was really interested. Yeah, they were up there looking for nickel and copper and gold.
To your point about changing lenses.
Exactly
of what you're
right.
looking for.
So even 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, whenever this was, even then, no one was really looking for rare earths or carbonatites. And it was somewhat esoteric knowledge to have, like, what do these things actually look like? So I was like, I have to come and talk to your manager and see if we can go have a look.
Take me to your manager.
Yeah. So we did. And the manager, Dean Tuck, got on board straight away and was like, all right, this is awesome. Like, we're heading up there to do some rock chipping for nickel copper in the next few weeks. Come along and we'll spend a day and go out and do the rare earths, and we'll pick some targets. So the team there put our heads together and we started figuring out what would we be looking for here. So in the area, in the Gifford Creek complex up there, it is a carbonatite, but it's sort of an atypical carbonatite. It's not your classic big round magnetic blob like lots of them are. It's sort of all these thin sinuous dikes that cut across the country rock there. Very, very different. It doesn't have a strong magnetic signature, but has a very strong thorium signature. So we started looking in the thorium data, got the thorium data reprocessed and started picking out targets. The sort of the current thinking at the time was that there's a big crustal structure that cuts through the area called the Lions River Fault, and all the known carbonatites sit on the northern side of that. And the idea was that no, there's none on the south side of the fault. So the company that had the northern half of the fault, their tenure sort of stopped right on the fault. So we started looking at the ages of the rocks in there, and it turns out that there's actually very similar rocks on both sides of the fault. They're both older than the carbonatite, so they could potentially be a feasible host. So all of a sudden it starts saying, well, this actually looks like quite a prospective area on this side. So we delineated a couple targets there. And then the very first rock chip we took was 11% rare earth, which is very, very high grade rare earth.
Very high grade, yeah.
And then, subsequent just awesome exploration by the team there ended up, culminating in a Prospector of the Year award in 2023. Myself, Luke Blaze, Matt Crow and Nick Chapman. And Dean Tuck, the manager, selflessly left himself off the list because 4 is the maximum you can nominate.
Good man.
Shout out, Dean.
Yeah.
Discoveries are made by teams. Discoveries are absolutely made by teams. And my small role in that was just a PhD student with slightly esoteric knowledge of a weird type of carbonatite.
That's perfect.
That led to a big discovery. And so we won that award in 2023. And that was the first time a rare earth deposit was named as the most significant discovery in Australia.
Wow.
All the previous ones had been the classics: copper, gold, uranium, nickel, that sort of stuff. So super exciting. And it really sort of shows what I was talking about. Discovery rates for traditional commodities are going down. Discovery rates for sort of these critical metals are actually on the way up. And last year, it was another carbonatite that won the award for the Looney deposit, which is quite close to some carbonatites you might be familiar with. So really, sort of an interesting discovery story of a deposit type that no one's really looked for much in Australia, but are starting to look for now in much greater effort.
Yeah, beautiful. So I suppose then to begin to look towards the future, and particularly your involvement with the Senate, well, like, what's the opportunity here, Ross? Like, if we let you off the lead and said, go your hardest at some big questions, go figure things out, what are you doing in the exploration space for Australian resources? Like, what's the opportunity here?
Well, I think the centre, one of the missions of the centre, or the main mission of the centre really, is to train up the next generation of geoscientists that have the skill sets to go out and look for these things. So back even when I was going through, and I'm sure when Archie and Anthony was going through, it was even more on classic deposit types. But
classic deposit. I'm so sorry.
We were still looking for flint and stone.
But I mean, in my economic geology class of year 3 geology, was all about orogenic gold deposits, porphyry coppers, all this sort of stuff. And they're still very important deposit types. I'll reinforce that. But there was this is what a carbonatite looks like. This is how we develop an exploration model for a carbonatite. There wasn't, this is what a lithium pegmatite looks like, and this is how you find a lithium pegmatite. So part of the centre is training up young geologists and re-educating older geologists this is what we're looking for these days. Like, we're looking for different things, right? And having a centre that has a bit of leeway behind it to actually put some effort into this, I think is awesome. Like, we're revisiting carbonatite complexes from across Australia as part of this centre. We're putting together into sort of a holistic view of these things. We can inform exploration for new ones. We can help assist with the processing of the existing ones because they're very metallurgically complex things. And it's just perfect timing for something like this at the moment where we're really recognising how critical these resources are, and the opportunity in front of us right now as a country is just unbelievable. I mean, as Marco said many times, like, Australia is basically the perfect place for this. Like, we've got a very diverse range of rock types. We've got represented rock types from all different ages. We have an endowment of just about every mineral you could want. I think diamonds are probably the only one we don't have much of, which who needs those? So we really like the perfect.
Some of us might.
Some of us might.
I'm looking for one. I know he's listening.
So the opportunities are right in front of us, and I think we're building a team that can really address some of these points, and we can really start to increase these search bases that we haven't previously looked into for whatever reason. And I think it's super exciting to be part of.
Absolutely. Oh, Ross, you legend. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me. That was enjoyable.
Thank you.
Fabulous.